Hey guys, how's it going? Jam here, and welcome to the second battle in the Track Build Battles series. This time it's a battle of the Nissan Silvias, with the S13 going up against the S14. As you can see, we're starting off with a slightly older model. To give it its full name on Forza, at least, it's the 1992 Silvia Club Ks. And as you should be able to also tell, it's running the wide body kit to give me some nice wider tyres. And I say nice wider tyres, it's still got narrower tyres than the other one, but that's besides the point. The only thing that I didn't realise is when I said in episode 1 that I would use body kits if they were available because of the extra tyre size, as I say, I didn't realise that that meant you couldn't get front aero on the car. And at a track like this, or at this track, front aero is rather important. And I put the wide body kits on both cars, and I noticed the lack of front aero on both cars. So, and technically, not having Forza front aero is against the rules of the series. It's because I said that was going to be one of the... There's only 3 things that I was going to mandatorily put on every car. Is mandatorily even a word? Well, if it is, you know what I mean. Yeah, the race aero was going to be mandatory, along with a race roll cage and race tyres. That was it. And body kits means that I can't put on front race aero. Although, as you can also see, this car does have rear race aero. So I don't know what's really going on there. I've also just realised, last episode, there was no engine sound in any of the replays for some reason. And I'd loaded up this replay a couple of times to see if it was working. The first time it did, and then like the second time I tried it, third time I tried it, fourth time I tried it, it didn't work. I tried a couple of different things to get the engine sounds to work on this car, on this replay. Nothing worked, so I just gave up and thought, well, I'll just do it with no sound again. I'm watching it back now and I've just realised that the sound is working, so God knows. I've just tweeted Forza about it as well, the Forza Motorsport account, so yeah. Getting a bit off topic though. So, yes, body kit discussion over, as I've only got about 3/4 of a lap to talk about the rest of this car. Both cars have got the stock engine again this week. This car is pushing 360 horsepower, nearly enough. And that's largely thanks to a Sport turbo upgrade, which increases the power by, I think it's 85 horsepower or something like that. So quite a big amount of horsepower through that extra turbo upgrade. And I think it's the lightest car that's gone so far this series, weighing in at 2,250 pounds, again, or thereabouts. Forza stats, again, as I said in the last episode, not really that important, but the game reckons it's got 6.4 top speed, 6.2 handling, which is a lot higher than I think the last 3 cars at least. I think it was sort of 5, 6 for the 2 HSVs, so that's a big improvement, should be better around the corners. And then 8.3 acceleration, which is lower than we've seen before, presumably to accommodate the extra handling, and then 6.1 braking as the final stat. I think I'm going to extend this episode a little bit, because I've just realised that I kind of want to talk about how the car's driven, and I'd normally only show 2 laps, but I'll tell you what, I'll show you 3 laps of this car, just so you can stare at its beauty for a little bit longer. What I talk about how it drives. Now, I said that I noticed the difference of not having front air on either of the cars, and that, as you can see, as I go flying into the braking zone into turn 2, getting it turned in wasn't normally an issue. But the cars felt like they had so much grip, both cars had so much rear grip, that I felt like I should be able to take more corner speed. So the front end wasn't understeering, but it wasn't quite gripping in and giving me the response that I wanted. This S13 only had 2 8.5s on the rear, obviously that's the tyre width, so on the rear of the car is what I mean to say, with 2 7.5s on the front. So it's relatively even, but it does have that race rear wing. So coming out of the slower corners, I was finding it quite hard to get the traction down. There's a couple of places in this track, especially at the tight hairpin, where getting traction down is hard enough anyway. And the newer car had bigger rear tyres than this one. So I was definitely noticing that. As you can see there, I was going a little bit of Explorer out on the outside curve of Spoon. So yeah, that was just a quick little bit that I wanted to say about how I felt this car drove. And that is 3 laps and nearly 5 minutes of the video already. So we'll move on to the next one. I'll be back in a minute. So now we move on to the newer model, the S14. or to give it its Forza name, the 2000 Nissan Silvia Spec R. And as you may be able to immediately tell, this car also has the wide body kit that Forza gives you the option for, which I also mentioned earlier. And I've loaded into the replay with no engine sound again. This is starting to get rather annoying, especially considering how it seems to be really random. Anyway, I'll gloss over it. You'll just have to put up with my voice and no background for this video, as I go very deep into turn 2 for the first time on the cold tyres. Yeah, there'll be no sound for this part of the video in the background apart from my voice, unfortunately. It wasn't too bad with the HSV, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And when we get to the side-by-side comparison, I'll just use the audio from the older one. Anyway, getting onto this car. As I said, it does have the body kit, but you've all probably noticed that there's no rear aero on this car. It's got one of the body kit options. It's actually the Rocket Bunny rear wing that goes with this kit. And I'm just experimenting at this early stage of the series, really, because the body kit doesn't let you have front Forza aero anyway. With the older car, I built it up and thought, well, I'll just have the rear aero, that's good enough. But as I said, when I drove it, I could really feel the difference I'm lacking of having the front aero. So when I built this car, I was looking at the rear aero options, and while this isn't adjustable like the race Forza aero, and it doesn't quite give as much downforce, judging by the stats, this sort of rear lip spoiler does. It's a bit more of a lip spoiler, isn't it? But anyway, this rear aero option does still increase the handling, presumably by adding more downforce than the stock rear wing on the car. So it's, I guess, a sport rear wing option. So yeah, I'm not sure how I want to go forward with the restrictions on the series. Obviously, the wide body kit is great for adding extra tyre width to the cars. As I mentioned in the previous car with the S13's intro, that there's a couple of places on this track where no matter what the car, it's really hard to get the power down, specifically coming out of this hairpin. As you can see on my first lap here, trying to take a wide line to get the power down earlier, and then I was still kicking up smoke on the exit. And coming out of this chicane that we go into as well, also very difficult to get the power down. So getting that wide body kit on to get wider rear tyres specifically is very helpful. And this car has even wider tyres than the old version. They both got 275s on the front, but this one's got 305s on the rear as opposed to the 285s of the S13. This one's also slightly less powerful, with 350 horsepower as opposed to about 360. And the torque is a huge difference. This car also has the stock engine, but I didn't upgrade the turbo in this one. I did mention about that before with the older car. But this one I didn't upgrade the turbo, and the torque figure is down at 286, so quite a lot of difference. And it's also about 150 pounds heavier. So they're built kind of differently in quite a few different ways, partly through just my choice of, as I say, ignoring my restriction, and partly through upgrading the engine differently. And obviously this one's just naturally heavier, but it's got bigger tyres. So it's going to be interesting to see how they compare. Yeah, but going back to the core restrictions and the body kits, it's really annoying that you can't have front aero on the body kit. I kind of understand why, but then why would you also allow the... There's so many small things I could question. I'm not going to sit here and question them all, because I'll be going on all day. But I think in future, if a car has a body kit, I might forego the aero restriction, just because I want those bigger tyres, so I want the body kit. And obviously I can't have the front aero if I go for the body kit, so I might as well not bother with the rear aero, because it does mess with the balance of the car. I want to get this point in quickly, because I realise I'm running quite long again. They both have the same front end issue, but the rear end acts so differently. This car's good out of the slow speed corners because of those bigger rear tyres, but it struggles through the likes of 130R, which we're coming into now, because of the lacking, or it's not lacking, but because of the slightly lower amount of rear downforce, whereas the older car was completely opposite. It had the rear downforce, but it didn't have the traction. But anyway, I've gone on for 3 laps and a little bit more for this one, So I haven't quite given you all the information that I normally would. I'm going to try and stop myself talking immediately, and we'll go and move on to the head-to-head comparison.
So, as we come to start the flying lap in both cars, I suddenly realised how similar both the liveries are, and I probably should have picked different base colours to tell them apart a little bit easier. But as you can see on screen, it's the S13 on the left, as it runs a little bit wide through 130R. On the fastest lap as well, you can just goes to show how much I was pushing these cars. Again, taking slightly different lines through turn 2. It's very tricky to get right. Do you attack the apex? Do you go for a good exit? But then why go for a good exit if there's turn 3 is just as tight? And also, is it first gear? Is it second gear? You know, lots of different things you got to make up on the fly when you're going through there. That's why I put lots of laps in these cars. Well, I say lots of laps. Every car gets the same amount of laps, but I'm doing lots of practice at the track. Yeah, it's a track I very much like, so I don't see why I wouldn't. And as we come into the hairpin, it does look like the S14 is just ahead. It'd be very hard to tell if it wasn't for that such a sharp change of the camera in the replay. It does look like every time it goes through a corner, it looks like the S13's catching up. But on the exit, maybe it's those big tyres that are helping the S14 just out-drag. As you can see, the stats at the bottom, they've got this. It's technically got worse acceleration, but maybe it's just got better traction. They've got the same handling, the same braking. And the S14 with supposedly much higher top speed, but then they get their handling in different ways, as we've said. As we're coming around the final corner now, dragging it to the line. Will the top speed of the S14 get it to the line first? It already seems to be ahead. It still looks like it's ahead, and it does cross the line first. So on to the times. And the S13 will show you first this time. We know it was unfortunately a little bit slower than the newer car, and as it goes into 4th out of 5 currently on the leaderboard, but a very, very small margin behind the Maloo Oot. And we have a new leader with the Silvia S14, just over a tenth of a second quicker than the Aston Martin Vantage that set the benchmark in episode 1 of the series, and this is the first built-up car that has managed to go faster. I'm still quite happy with how close the overall grid is though so far. Anyway, that's the end of the episode. Goodbye.